So I think the first question has got to be Dominic Raab. I mean, should he stay or should he go?
I think the Foreign Office has had a pretty bad week. I think they've had a bad
You
week
think?
within Whitehall. I think they've had a bad week internationally. And I think that when there is a very clear person who's in charge of a department that is very clearly failing, then yes, some very serious questions need to be asked within the government about whether or not he can hang on to his position for much longer. However, what I would say is that this would appear to be a failure across the ministerial corridor in the Foreign Office and not just at the senior leadership level. After all, the responsible minister for relations with the region as a whole was also on holiday and also did not come back. Lord Ahmed sent out an email last Friday to colleagues in relation to an issue that some of us were having in the development sector with regard to our contractors who aren't covered by the resettlement program, that did not address the issue in any way whatsoever. And then we find out today and yesterday that he was phoning it in too, that he didn't come back to his desk until after Kabul had fallen. This is not something that can be delegated to the minister in charge of lobsters and small Pacific islands. This is an issue where the people who have been negotiating with Pakistan for 2 years, the people who have the clout to put in phone calls that are going to be picked up when there's chaos on the ground, they needed to be back at their desks. They didn't need to be mobile. They should have known to come back. And I'm sorry, but if you're a senior minister in the Foreign Office, you sign up knowing that there is no holiday you can possibly go on in the coming years that is without risk of you going back to your desk.
And is
That's
there? And
them's the breaks
perhaps
of the top four jobs.
both answer this, but to what extent? Because the foreign secretary said that it was around 6 p.m. Afghan time, Friday afternoon, 13th of August, so that would have been a week, the day before yesterday, recommending a call to the Afghan foreign minister, but then it was overtaken by events. It was delegated to a minister of state because he says, this is according to Dominic Raab, he was prioritising security and capacity at the airport on the advice of the Director and Director General overseeing the crisis response. And then the Afghan foreign minister wasn't able to take the call because of the rapidly deteriorating situation. How much could have all that been predicted? How much could have these events been predicted in advance enough for perhaps Raab or his junior not to have gone on holiday at all?
Well, embarrassingly enough for the Brits, the French pulled their 600 evacuees out. And that, by the way, I'm talking there about their vulnerable people who were non-French citizens. They evacuated them, I think, about 6 weeks ago? And they were accused of being defeatist when in fact they were just better planners than the British were, and better planners than the Americans were. And they knew not to put their faith in their allies in this situation, which, as it turns out, is something that we should have been prepared for too. Because as Tony Blair was laying out this morning, it would appear that we can no longer rely upon the Americans on the world stage. And that's a very, very big Rubicon to have crossed in terms of international relations. If the United States are abrogating their responsibility to be the world's traffic cop, then that means that they have to relinquish a lot of the control that they have at international organizations. They have to pipe down when stuff comes up, and they have to leave it to people who will get involved. They have to leave it to people who will roll up their sleeves, because if they're no longer going to do that, then they can pipe down and sit down for the next 5 years.
And well, we'll talk more about that in just a moment. But Sven, could this have been predicted? Do you think that this could have been better predicted?
Well, first of all, I'd just like to endorse and agree with everything that Lauren has just said there. I mean, I think the fact that Raab didn't have the common sense to work out this would be the time to come home and get on an RAF flight. Your surgeon wouldn't not turn up to a major operation when lives are on the line. You know, a CEO wouldn't not turn up to a major deal that was going down in a company. This is just common sense. And the idea that the alternative is this projected arrogance and lack of care, and a holiday is more important than Afghan lives. That's not something we want to be projecting out. In the same way as I said before, when in the middle of COVID, one of the other major issues we've been facing recently, you know, the health minister is sleeping with his advisor and is much more interested in that. You know, this is such a bad look for those senior ministers, but it doesn't surprise me because there seems like a culture of that sort of lack of culpability and lack of intent. The senior politicians that we have in this country at the moment, maybe it's a generational thing. Yeah, was it predictable? Of course, it was predictable. Everyone knows that the Afghan forces, the police forces and the army, apart from the special forces, the ANA, the Afghan National Army special forces, were very good. But without air support, without the necessary air support and what it was actually the technical support for the aircraft, they didn't stand a chance. Of course, they're going to fold like a pack of cards. Anyone would in that situation. Yes, it was predictable. The speed of it perhaps was a surprise, but it was